My name is Mira Collins. I'm 31 years old, and on my sister's birthday, I raised a mimosa and calmly gave her 30 days to get out of the condo she'd been living in for free. It started like most family events do for us: too much alcohol, too much noise, and too many unspoken resentments hiding under polite conversation. Clara, my younger sister by 3 years, had insisted on hosting her birthday brunch at our mom's house for the ambiance, which we all knew was code for free booze and someone else to clean up. When my boyfriend Ethan and I pulled up, there were already too many cars packed along the curb. I could see silhouettes through the window, people moving around, glasses in hands. Ethan glanced over at me as he turned off the engine. "You sure you want to do this?" he asked. "No," I said, "but we're here." He squeezed my hand. "Tap my leg under the table if you want me to fake a work emergency." I managed a smile. "Deal." Inside, the house smelled like syrup and hairspray and Prosecco. Clara was holding court in the dining room, dressed in an all-white jumpsuit like she'd confused her birthday with a rehearsal dinner. Her lipstick was already smudged at the corners, and the way she laughed a little too loudly told me she'd been drinking for a while. "Look who finally made it," she called out, spreading her arms like she owned the place. "Happy birthday," I said, leaning in for a hug. She smelled like vanilla perfume and cheap champagne. Mike, her boyfriend, was in the corner, half-heartedly chasing their toddler around the coffee table like he was in an obstacle course he didn't sign up for. Our mom perched at the head of the table with a Bellini in hand, cheeks flushed, hair done up like she was on a cruise ship at noon instead of hungover from whatever she'd drunk last night. My cousins Emma and Jared sat near the middle, side by side. They were two of the only people in the room who still seemed tethered to reality. Jared lifted his glass in a subtle salute. Emma gave me a small, sympathetic smile, the kind you give someone walking into a storm they can't avoid. Ethan and I found seats near them. I poured myself a mimosa, more orange juice than champagne, and tried not to think about the condo. 6 months earlier, Clara had called me sobbing. "Please, Mir," she'd said, voice shaking. "We got evicted. Mike's between jobs. Daycare is killing us. We have nowhere to go. Just 2 months, I swear, just until we catch up." I'd been sitting at my own kitchen table in my own small apartment, looking at the spreadsheet where I tracked expenses from the condo I'd bought as an investment. It wasn't anything fancy. 2 bedrooms, small balcony, decent neighborhood. I'd planned to rent it out, save the income, and eventually use it to help me move out of state. Instead, I heard myself say, "Okay, 2 months." 2 turned into 4. 4 turned into 6. Rent never appeared. Utilities were tight this month. Daycare was always about to change. Mike was almost hired. Meanwhile, I was paying HOA fees, property taxes, and watching a perfectly good investment sit there like a black hole with my name on the deed. But I kept quiet, because that's what I do. That's what I did. I pushed the thought away as Mom topped off everyone's glasses and clinked her spoon gently against the side of hers. "To my baby girl," she cooed, already a little slurry. "Another year older, another year more beautiful, and somehow still single, which means I get to keep you." People laughed. Clara did her best coy eye roll. My dad grunted from the far end of the table, already 2 beers in despite the brunch setting, like he'd been dragged there against his will. The food was good, I'll give them that. Stacks of pancakes, platters of bacon, fruit salad that no one touched. Conversation buzzed around me like static. I nodded in the right places, smiled when people looked my way, let Ethan squeeze my knee under the table when I went too quiet. For a while, I managed to pretend things were normal, until Clara stood up. She swayed a little as she lifted her glass, the sunlight catching the rim, throwing little sparks across the table. "I'd like to make a toast," she announced. The room quieted. Even the toddler, mid-squirm on Mike's lap, went unusually still. "To me," she said, grinning, "and to people who know how to stay in their lane." She turned her head and locked eyes with me. So did everyone else. Silence pressed in around us. It wasn't the kind of joke you could pretend was aimed somewhere else. We all knew what she meant. She meant the last time I'd gently suggested she talk to a financial counselor. The time I'd dared to ask when they planned to start paying rent. The time I'd refused to co-sign on a car loan Mike wanted. Ethan's hand tightened on my thigh under the table. Emma went very still. Jared stared down at his plate like it was the most fascinating thing he'd ever seen. I felt the same familiar wave rise in my chest. Humiliation, anger, the urge to shrink, to laugh it off, to let it slide for the sake of family. But something was different this time. I thought about the signed contract sitting in a folder on my desk at home, the one that said a buyer had gone under agreement on the condo last week, inspections scheduled, closing date set, money already earmarked in my mind for a new place 3 states away. I thought about Mike's text yesterday asking if I could cover their car insurance just this once, about my mom's comment on the phone. "You've got it, Mira. You're good with money. That's what family is for." Then I thought about the fact that I hadn't said no to them in a way that actually stuck. Not once. I picked up my mimosa. My hand didn't shake. "To people," I said, my voice cutting through the quiet, "who now have 30 days to find a new apartment, since I just sold the condo you live in." The silence was so complete it was almost comical. Clara's fork slipped from her fingers and clattered against her plate. Somewhere to my left, a chair creaked as someone shifted uncomfortably. My dad swore under his breath. My mom leaned toward me, eyes wide, mascara slightly smudged. "What did you do?" she whispered, like I'd just confessed to a crime. I took a slow sip of my drink. It tasted better than it had all morning. "What I did," I said calmly, "was finally take my life back." I could feel the room pivoting around me. I wasn't yelling, I wasn't crying, I wasn't making a scene. But for the first time, I wasn't cushioning theirs either. "I bought that condo as an investment," I continued, looking at no one and everyone at once. "Not as a favor. I gave you 6 months, Clara. 6. No rent, just utilities. And even those were late half the time. I'm done being your safety net." "Are you serious?" Clara's voice cracked. "You're selling the apartment without even talking to us?" "I gave you a roof over your head for free," I said. "You toasted to people staying in their lane. Well, I'm switching highways." Mike opened his mouth like he wanted to jump in, but my mom beat him to it. "You always pick the worst moments to make a point," she snapped. "This is supposed to be a celebration." "And she could have kept my name out of her mouth," I replied. "But here we are." Emma stared hard at her napkin, chewing the inside of her cheek. Jared's lips twitched like he was fighting a laugh and losing. Ethan just watched me, eyes steady, like he'd been waiting a long time to see me draw a line. Clara shoved her chair back so hard it scraped loudly against the floor. "So what?" she demanded. "We're homeless now?" "No," I said. "You have 30 days. I was going to offer to help with first month's rent someplace actually in your budget. I was going to tell you that today." I glanced at her glass, still half full. "But after that toast, you'll figure it out on your own." The panic rippled then, voices overlapping, my dad muttering, my mom spilling her drink. Mike half standing, half sitting, torn between staying at the table and following Clara as she stormed into the kitchen. I set my glass down, dabbed the corner of my mouth with a napkin like we were done with a normal meal, and stood. "Happy birthday," I said. Then I walked out. I was halfway down the driveway when I heard the door open behind me. Footsteps hurried to catch up. "Mira," Emma called. I turned. She and Jared came toward me, the wind tugging at Emma's hair, Jared shoving his hands deep into his pockets. "That was," Emma began. "Brutal," Jared finished. Emma nodded. "But fair." I exhaled. The anger hadn't even fully arrived yet. All I felt was strangely light. "This," I said, looking back at the house where voices were already rising, hands waving in the kitchen window, "was just the beginning." And I had no idea just how messy the rest was about to get. The next morning, I woke up to my phone having a full-blown panic attack on my nightstand. Ethan was still asleep, one arm flung over his face, hair a mess. The room was dim, curtains pulled mostly closed, but my phone screen lit up the ceiling every few seconds like lightning. Missed call, voicemail, new text. Over and over, stacked on top of each other. I just lay there for a moment staring at it, feeling the familiar surge of anxiety rise like it wanted to take control. The old version of me would have grabbed the phone, called back, apologized for causing drama, tried to smooth everything over until my own boundaries disappeared. But yesterday had cracked something open I couldn't close again. I rolled onto my side, reached out, and flipped the phone over so the screen faced down. Ethan's voice floated out from under his arm. "You planning on letting that thing self-destruct, or—" "I'm thinking about it," I said. He moved his arm and squinted at me. "How are you feeling?" I considered the question. "Lighter," I admitted. "And also, like I've started a small war." He reached for my hand under the covers. "If it's a war, it's one they declared a long time ago. You just finally showed up to defend yourself." That stayed with me as I finally sat up, grabbed my phone, and braced myself. 21 missed calls. 10 from Clara. 6 from Mom. 3 from Mike. 2 from unknown. There were voicemails, too. 10 new ones. The notification bubble glared at me like an accusation. I walked to the kitchen, put the kettle on, and only then hit play on the first one. Clara's voice, bright and tight like she was trying very hard not to scream. Mira, what the hell? You can't just drop something like that in front of everyone. Call me back. We need to talk. Like adults, not whatever that was. Ever. Delete. Second voicemail. Mom. Honey, I don't know what's gotten into you. Yesterday was supposed to be about your sister. You embarrassed her. You embarrassed all of us. We need to sit down and talk this through. You don't do this to your own family. There it was. That phrase they trotted out like a prayer whenever they needed me to feel guilty enough to forget I had a spine. Third voicemail. Mike, sounding like he hadn't slept. Look, Mira, you blindsided us. You didn't even give us a chance to prepare. We have a kid. You can't just pull the rug like this. Call me back. We can work something out. I made coffee while the messages kept playing. By voicemail 5, the tone had shifted. Clara again, this time tearful and angry, the words tumbling out. You're being heartless. We are barely holding it together, and you pick my birthday of all days to... What? Prove a point? You love that condo more than your own family. I hope you're happy. I wasn't happy, but I wasn't crumbling either. Around noon, the texts started coming in. Clara, you didn't even answer one call? Grow up, Mira. Mom, we all make mistakes. You have too. But this is cruel. Mike, you're destabilizing your nephew's life for money. Think about that before you answer. I put the phone down and let it buzz itself hoarse on the counter. Around 1, it buzzed again with a different name. Emma, you okay? I sank onto a stool and exhaled. Surprisingly, yeah, I wrote back. I actually feel fine. She replied almost immediately. Good, because they're all losing it. Clara's talking about getting a lawyer. LOL. I smiled despite myself. Of course she was. I knew enough to know there was nothing for any lawyer to do. There was no lease, no written agreement, no rental history. Clara and Mike were, legally, guests who'd overstayed every boundary. Still, the threat was classic Clara. Loud, dramatic, and based on the assumption that everyone would cave before she ever had to face reality. By day 3, they stopped hiding behind voicemails. Mike showed up at my office. My receptionist buzzed me. Hey, Mira, there's a guy here asking for you. Says it's urgent. My stomach twisted. What does he look like? Mid-30s, dark hair, kind of frazzled? I closed my eyes. Yeah, that's him. Send him to the small conference room. I'll be there in a minute. When I walked in, he was pacing, hands jammed into his pockets, eyes bloodshot. You blindsided us, he said as soon as the door closed. No hello, no apology. At brunch, in front of everyone, that was messed up. I sat down, letting his words hang in the air for a second. 6 months of promises and no rent kind of blindsided me, I said. He flinched, just slightly, then he pivoted. Look, we just need more time, 2 months max. I'll pick up extra shifts, we'll tighten the budget, we'll start paying rent immediately, or at least something. Just give us a chance. The condo is under contract, I said. Inspection is next week. We close in a month. I can't just change my mind because you're suddenly aware of a deadline I gave you in front of a plate of eggs. He scrubbed a hand over his face. You could back out. It's not too late. We're family. We can figure something out between us. I'll pay you under the table once things get better. I laughed. I didn't mean to, but it slipped out, short and humorless. What part of this situation makes you think I trust you with anything financial anymore? I asked. His jaw clenched. For a moment, I saw something ugly flicker in his eyes. You really let money change you, he said quietly. Thought you were better than that. I stood. No, Mike. I let money show me who everyone else really was. There's a difference. He left after that, muttering something under his breath about greed. That night, Clara came to my apartment. She didn't knock. She pounded, over and over, until Ethan muted the TV and looked at me. You want me to get it? He asked. No, I said. She'll just scream at you instead. I opened the door. She was already in tears. Angry tears. The kind that burn. How could you humiliate me like that? She spat. In front of everyone, on my birthday? You made me look like a fool. You made yourself look like a fool, I said. I just finally stopped pretending I didn't notice. You were waiting to ambush me, she snapped. You could have told us privately. You could have given us a chance. Instead, you stood up and threw my life away like it was a joke. You toasted to people staying in their lane, I said. You were drunk and obnoxious. Don't blame me for deciding to exit the highway. Her face twisted. She started listing every petty offense she could reach for. You were late to my baby shower. You always think you're better than me. You stole my Halloween candy when we were kids. Somewhere around the Halloween candy, I realized how pointless this was. You have a week and a half, I said flatly. I suggest you start packing. I'm not going back to live with Mom and Dad, she said immediately, like the thought physically hurt. You're not staying in my place, I said, and you're not staying with me. Figure it out. Her eyes went wide with disbelief. I'm your sister. And for 6 months, I was your free landlord, I replied. Those jobs are over. She stormed off, stumbling down the hallway, yelling, I'm done with you. Don't ever talk to me again. Which honestly sounded more like a solution than a threat. Later that night, Mom called. I hesitated, then answered. I shouldn't have. She was drunk. I could tell by the way her words looped back on themselves, the slight delay between thought and speech. You don't do this to your own sister, she kept repeating. If your father were sober enough to talk, he'd tell you the same. Then she said the quiet part out loud. You think you're better than us because you've got your little job and your money and your rental properties. But don't forget who changed your diapers. I hung up, not gently, because that was it, right there. They didn't see me as a person. They saw me as an extension of them, a resource, a backup plan, a walking, talking safety net they could guilt into holding the weight whenever life felt heavy. Family only came up when I tried to say no. The next day, Emma and Jared took me out for drinks. We barely talked about the situation. We laughed about old stories, gossiped about work, complained about the city's terrible parking. Every now and then, Emma would touch my arm and say, You okay? And I'd nod. Because underneath the spinning chaos, I knew this much. Clara wasn't going to go down quietly. She was going to claw and cry and spin stories and try to make everyone forget how we got here. And for the first time in my life, I was ready to let her do whatever she wanted, as long as it didn't involve me fixing it. By day 4, the situation had mutated into something grotesque and oddly predictable, like watching a slow-motion car crash you tried to warn everyone about, but they insisted on driving anyway. The first sign came through a text from an unknown number. Unknown. Really messed up what you did to Clara and the baby. Cold. I stared at it, then typed back a single question. Who is this? No reply. Seconds later, another unknown number. Putting a child on the street is insane. Hope you can sleep at night. And that's when it clicked. Clara had begun her favorite hobby, victim theater. The story she was spreading, her generous, selfless sister Mira, me, had suddenly decided to sell their home, leaving her, Mike, and their toddler homeless overnight. No mention of 6 months rent-free, missed utility payments, my offers to help them relocate, the condo being my investment property, her toast telling me to stay in my lane. No. In Clara's rewrite, she was Cinderella, and I was the wicked rich sister who snatched away her glass slipper. I ignored the texts, but I didn't ignore what came next. The buyer's panic call. Around noon, my phone rang. Not Clara, not Mom, not Mike. It was my real estate agent. Hey, Mira, we have a problem. The tone alone made my stomach clench. What's going on? Well, the buyer scheduled their inspector for tomorrow, right? Right. She inhaled sharply. Clara and Mike contacted the inspector directly. They told him there might be a mold problem and that the condo could be unsafe for children. I closed my eyes, pressing my thumb and middle finger against the bridge of my nose. There's no mold, I said. I had an inspection done before they moved in. I know, she said, but now the buyers are nervous. They want reassurance before moving forward. Of course they did. Sabotage. Clara wasn't just spinning stories anymore. She was directly interfering with the sale. I hung up and immediately called Clara. She answered on the first ring, voice dripping with faux innocence. Oh, it's you. You told the inspector there's mold, I said. She didn't deny it, didn't even hesitate. Well, we were just being honest, she replied. It feels damp sometimes. That's not healthy for kids. You've lived there 6 months, I said. If there were dampness or mold issues, why didn't you mention it? Why didn't you ask me to do anything about it? Silence. You're trying to sabotage the sale so you can stay longer, I said. Still silence. Then, quietly, You're unbelievable. No, I said. I'm just not manipulatable anymore. And I hung up. I didn't wait for the defensive meltdown I knew was brewing on her end. Instead, I did what I should have done weeks ago. I called my lawyer. He was calm, unfazed. This won't stop the sale, he said. But expect more tactics. They might refuse to leave. They might damage the property. Document everything. So that's what I did next. The unannounced visit. I drove to the condo that evening without warning them. If they were planning anything destructive, I wanted to know early. When Mike opened the door, he froze like he'd been caught stealing something out of a vending machine. Mira. Mike. He stepped aside reluctantly. The condo was clean. Too clean. That kind of tidy only people trying to impress a buyer produce. Clara was in the living room, pretending not to see me, scrolling angrily on her phone like the screen had personally offended her. Their toddler was asleep on the couch, clutching a stuffed dinosaur, looking innocent in a way only children can when surrounded by adults who refuse to grow up. I need to walk through, I said. Inspection is in 3 days. Mike shifted his weight, blocking me slightly. You don't live here. No, I said, brushing past him, but I own here. And then I saw it. The paint. Beige, uneven, splotchy. One wall was half finished. Another was wet, the shine of fresh paint unmistakable. You're painting my walls? I asked. Clara didn't look up. We were just trying to freshen it up. I pulled out my phone and took a photo. That's vandalism, I said. You don't have my permission to alter the property. Mike's face turned chalky. We were going to paint it back before leaving. Sure, I said. I'm sure you were. I walked through every room, documenting everything. Nicks, scuffs, closet, floors. When I left, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I simply emailed both of them a formal 7-day vacate notice on top of the already active 30-day timeline. If they were hoping I'd flinch under their chaos, they miscalculated. The Facebook lies. That night, Jared sent me a screenshot. Clara had posted a photo of herself standing dramatically inside the condo, my condo, arms folded, like she was posing for a magazine cover. Her caption, when your own sister sells your home out from under you, #family betrayal. The comments were full of strangers and half-acquaintances declaring, you deserve so much better, Queen. He'd really do that to you and the baby? Heartless people don't prosper. No mention of rent-free living, 6 months of generosity, the utilities I floated, the sale I planned long before her toast, her public humiliation attempt at brunch. Just a curated tragedy starring Clara the Martyr. I didn't comment. I just saved the screenshot, and every comment. Because now the lies weren't private anymore. The family's new plan. The next morning, Emma called in a whispered voice like she was hiding in her pantry. You're not going to believe this. Try me, I said. Mom told Clara and Mike they can move in, like, permanently. She says she's rescuing them from you. I laughed. A real shocked laugh. Of course she is, I said. She's telling everyone you abandoned your family, and that she's the only one stepping up. Stepping up? I echoed. She didn't even attend Clara's eviction hearings last year. Emma snorted. I know, Mira, I know. I sighed, deeply. Well, I said, at least now I know where they'll be when the deadline hits. You okay? Emma asked softly. Yeah, I said, for once I actually am. The move out. Clara and Mike left on a Sunday afternoon. No screaming, no confrontation, just absence. Emma texted me one word. They're out. They left the key with the front desk of my building. No note, no thank you. No acknowledgement of 6 months of generosity. I drove to the condo alone that night, bracing myself for destruction. Instead, I found something worse. Neglect. Carelessness. Evidence of a life they didn't value because they didn't pay for it. A broken crib leaning against the wall. A stained rug rolled up in the corner. A sticky fridge full of expired yogurt. Granola bar wrappers on the floor. A chipped mug on the counter that said best mom ever. And taped to the bathroom mirror. A child's drawing. Stick figures. A house. The word family written in shaky purple marker. For a moment, a single moment, it almost broke me. Not because I wanted them back in my life, but because of how much space, emotional, financial, mental, they had occupied without my permission. Space I was finally reclaiming. The next morning, the buyer's agent met me there. She looked around and shook her head. Honestly, she said, I expected worse after everything you told me. I nodded. They already did the real damage, I said quietly, just not to the walls. The inspection passed, the sale continued, and the countdown toward my escape had finally begun. The condo sale closed on a Friday afternoon. A wire transfer hit my account. More money in one place than I'd ever seen in my life. It should have felt triumphant, a win, a long-awaited victory lap after months of chaos. Instead, when I sat at my kitchen table staring at the confirmation email, all I felt was relief. Like a weight had dropped out of my hands, leaving them finally, blessedly, empty. That same evening, my phone rang. My mom. I should have let it go to voicemail. I really should have. But some part of me, the part that still hoped logic might break through, answered anyway. Her voice came through sharp, clipped, already trembling with indignation. They came here with nothing, she said. No greeting, no warmth, just accusation. Nothing, Mira. We had to buy groceries. The baby has been screaming all night and Mike is sleeping on the floor. A tiny, dark part of me wanted to say, sounds like every other family in crisis. Welcome to the reality you kept pretending didn't exist. Instead, I said, you told them to move in. We didn't have a choice, she snapped. You had a choice, I said calmly. You always do. You just don't like the consequences of other people finally having choices too. She inhaled sharply. You should have helped them, she continued. Where else were they supposed to go? They had 6 months to figure that out, I said. 6 months of free housing, utilities, and extensions. I offered help over and over. They said no, or ignored it, or spent the time blaming everyone but themselves. Mom went quiet. Not thoughtful quiet, weaponized quiet. Then she said the line that told me we were speaking different languages entirely. Clara's talking about pulling the baby out of daycare now. Says they can't afford it because you won't help anymore. There it was. The pivot. The implication. The emotional hook of guilt they always tried to attach to me. I didn't take it. I won't, I said simply. She's your sister, my mom argued. And I was her landlord, I replied. A very generous, very patient landlord who got a toast telling her to stay in her lane. I'm following that advice. Silence. A long, sharp silence. Then, you've changed. Good, I said. And she hung up. The family villain. The next morning, Jared texted me, FYI. You're officially the villain now. Family meetings are 50% about what you did and 50% about what you apparently still owe everyone. I laughed out loud in my kitchen. I didn't feel angry, didn't feel wounded. I felt free, cleaner inside than I had in years. I texted him back. Let them build a statue. I'm moving next week. Because I was. I'd been researching a new city for months. A small place 3 states away. Quiet, affordable. Boundaries built right into the geography. I put in an offer on a house that weekend. It was accepted in 24 hours. I didn't throw a goodbye party. Didn't send out an address change card. Didn't call to explain or justify or soften the blow. I just started packing. Ethan helped me fold clothes into boxes. He didn't ask if I was sure. He didn't ask if I'd regret it. He simply said, wherever you go, I'm with you. I didn't know I needed to hear it until then. The departure. On moving day, I loaded my car with the essentials and left the rest to the movers. I took one last look at my apartment, not sentimental, just acknowledging the version of me who used to live there. Then I shut the door. The drive felt like inhaling for the first time in months. Years, maybe. No more unexpected visits. No more guilt-laced voicemails. No more being the family's unpaid crisis manager. Just a long road, open sky, music drumming through the speakers, and Ethan's hand resting quietly over mine. The first voicemail of my new life. 4 days after settling in, I received a voicemail from an unknown number. Clara, hope you're happy, she said, the venom threaded thinly through exhaustion. You've destroyed this family. Mom says it's like you died. Nobody even wants to say your name right now. There was a long pause. Then, anyway, Mike has a line on a part-time job. We're thinking about getting our own place again. Don't worry, we're not asking for anything. We know better now. She hung up. I didn't call back. Because if they meant it, I didn't need to. And if they didn't, nothing I said would matter. The follow-up from Emma. A week later, Emma texted. Mom's exhausted. Clara and Mike are still there. No job yet. Still fighting. Dad's drinking more. Then, how long before they ask for money again? I typed, Clara won't. She's too proud. Mom might. Give it a month. 2.5 weeks later, the family group chat, dead silent for over a year, lit up with a photo of my nephew at a park. Clara posted it with, look who's doing great despite all the drama. Then, would be nice if everyone could put the past behind us. Which, translated from Clara speak, meant, we're ready for you to be useful again. I said nothing. 2 days later, Emma called. You're not crazy, she said. They want you back in orbit because without you, they're stuck with each other, and it's miserable. I'm not going back, I said. I know, she said. I just wanted to remind you. You did the right thing. 3 months later, my new place feels like breathing. Mornings are quiet. I walk to the park, make coffee without interruptions, sleep through the night. No banging on my door, no manipulative voicemails, no emotional ambushes disguised as family talks. Emma visited last weekend. She brought flowers, looked around my new home, and said, I still can't believe you actually did it. We sat on the balcony while she caught me up. Clara and Mike are still living with my parents, still fighting, still jobless. Mom is overwhelmed, but too proud to admit her part in the mess. Dad is drinking more. And through all of that, not one apology, Not a single acknowledgement of what they did, just silence and vague, passive-aggressive Facebook quotes about toxic people removing themselves. Meanwhile, I sleep better. I joined a gym. I'm looking at buying a second rental property, one I will lease to strangers rather than family. Because strangers sign contracts. Strangers respect boundaries. Strangers don't toast to you staying in your lane after 6 months of free housing. My family didn't break when I left. It cracked when I stopped holding it together. And for the first time in my life, I'm not going back.